All right, so here we are with Irene Avonelle Johnson Hawke in part 2 of her oral history, born in 1924, almost 98 years ago. And so today we want to talk a little bit more about her family, but also sort of what it was like growing up in the late 1920s, early 1930s in Tucson. So last time you talked about your grandparents on your mother's side. What were their names?
My grandmother was Janie Ora Evans Tonner, and my grandfather was Edward Alexander Tonner.
Okay, and you were quite close to them, when your mother was alive. That's right.
Right.
Okay, and you want to take a minute?
Just a second. Okay.
So describe them. You called him Daddy Tonner, right?
Daddy Tonner and Mommy Tonner.
Okay, so describe Daddy Tonner.
You want to start with Daddy Tonner?
Yeah, describe Daddy Tonner.
Well, unfortunately, as close as I was those first 13 years, I really don't have a lot of information about his ancestors.
I'm not looking for information. I just want to know what your relationship was with him. What kind of person was he?
Okay.
That kind of thing. I'm not looking for genealogical information.
Oh, okay. Well, I was thinking about that last night. Daddy Tonner was a very quiet, non-imposing, humble man. I really didn't hear him speak very much at any time. He was just a quiet presence in the home. My grandmother was the talker and the little spitfire, but my grandfather was a very quiet, calm, meditative sort of man. My most sharp memory of him is sitting in his home in the living room on Kansas Street in El Paso, Texas. And they had a beautiful Tiffany floor lamp that sat beside a rocking chair. And my grandpa, my Daddy Tonner, would sit in that chair in the evening with his Bible, reading the scriptures. I never remember ever hearing him use a foul word or a swear word. He didn't even use gosh and darn. He was just an extremely calm, quiet man and loved the Lord. I remember my sharpest memory was that memory of him sitting in the rocker with the lamp shining on him.
And was he an Adventist, Seventh-day Adventist?
He was a West End Seventh-day. No. He was a West End Methodist.
Okay. Was he a happy guy? Did he have fun with you? Did he play with you? Was he jolly?
I don't remember anything like that at all. Any interaction with him like that. And it puzzles me. There must have been, but I have no memory whatsoever of my grandfather hugging me or touching me or no interaction with us. Yet we all respected him so much and we all loved him.
And he was kind. Was he kind?
Oh, very kind. Very kind. I never heard him raise his voice or be ugly about anything.
Okay. Well, now let's turn to the Spitfire. Your grandmother, Mommy Tonner. Describe her.
Oh, Mommy Tonner. She was a doer and a vocal person. She and her youngest daughter, Henrietta, Raynor's mother, used to go at it with each other. They both had tempers, and I can remember them having arguments. But I never, in 13 years, heard her argue with my mother or heard my mother argue with her. Mama was such a peacemaker.
Uh, I'm sorry, you said you never heard who argue with each other?
I never heard Mommy Tanner and my mother argue with each other.
Oh, okay. As opposed to Henrietta, they argue all
Oh,
the time.
yeah. Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I was looking at that picture that you put on WeChat of my grandmother, of Mommy Tanner, and I looked at her face carefully, and my goodness, Henrietta was kind of a mirror of her mother.
Uh-huh.
They looked alike, and my mother looked just like my daddy Tanner.
Mm-hmm. And then, so what kind of interaction did you have with Mommy Tanner? Was she more effusive? Did she more outgoing, more affectionate, more talkative with you? Do you remember?
She was more talkative and outgoing, but again, this is a puzzle to me. I cannot remember her ever hugging me or giving me a kiss on the forehead or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember her cooking me breakfast,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember talking with her,
Mm-hmm.
but no physical touching or hugs or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. And what was she also a Methodist?
Yes.
Okay. And when she fixed you breakfast, do you remember what it was?
Oh, what I remember the most is from what I was told.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember sitting at the breakfast table in the kitchen and eating breakfast, because I remember the bacon. She always fixed bacon with our breakfast. And the story is, I would look up at my grandmother, my Mommy Tanner, and say, "Mommy Tanner, I'm eating lots of hell this morning."
Mm-hmm. And why would you say that?
Because the Adventists, which was the church that my mother and I went to in Tucson, went by dietary laws in the Old Testament, and you weren't supposed to eat pork.
Right. So when you went to El Paso, you got to eat a whole lot of hell.
Oh, I ate a lot of hell.
And did you enjoy it?
I loved it, and I still do.
No, to me, bacon is a sign that God loves us. So as proof. Okay, and then so occasionally, during the summer, you said you would take the train to El Paso with your mom, but did they also come to Tucson?
No, not in the early part of my life. When I say that, I mean not until probably 10 or 11. Then I remember very clearly my grandparents coming and living with us for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during that time that my grandfather died.
Uh-huh. Okay. And do you know, did he die of tuberculosis as well? Do you know?
I'm sorry?
Did he die of tuberculosis like your parents did? Do you know?
No, I don't know what my grandfather died of.
Uh-huh.
My grandfather worked for the railroad.
Uh-huh.
And during that time of work, he was badly injured while he was working, and something very hard hit his head,
Mm-hmm.
and they had to do surgery on him. And I was always told, and I don't know that it's true, but I presume it is, that they had put in a metal plate in his head. Now, I don't know why I was told that, but that's what I always do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So your mother only had one sibling, Henrietta, is that correct?
No, she had two siblings.
Uh-huh.
Henrietta was the youngest, and she had a brother, Ralph Tanner.
Mm-hmm. And was he older or younger than your mother?
My mother was the eldest of the three.
Okay. And did you have any interaction with Ralph growing up?
No, I had little, if any, action with my uncle until my mother died or was very sick. And he lived in Tucson, and I stayed at his house a couple of nights when she was in the hospital. I had a lot of interaction. Lots of interaction with my Aunt Henrietta. Mm-hmm. And we kids all called her Auntie.
Mm-hmm. And so what was that like? Because she was Brainerd's mother, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So
and she was just Oh, she was the most affectionate. In fact, I used to almost dread the train to stop in El Paso when we go over there because she would always meet us, and Auntie would. And as soon as she spied me, she would grab me and she would hug me until I'd lose my breath. She was my Aunt Henrietta was very demonstrative and very affectionate
Uh-huh.
and
So,
very hot tempered.
right. So what was it like living in their house for a couple of weeks? Was it quite volatile and, anything could happen at any moment, or did you all the kids play? I mean, Brainerd was
No,
playing.
it was a calm home.
Okay. And so Brainerd was 9 years older, but he had brothers and sisters, right?
He had a sister, Janie, and a brother, Ralph, and Brainerd was the eldest of those.
Okay. So would you all just play for 2 weeks and have fun while you were in El Paso?
I'm sorry.
So when you went to visit them in El Paso, what would you do? Did you just play
Oh,
all day, or what would you do?
no, Brainerd, I remember, seemed to have access to a car. And he had graduated from high school during those 13 years of my life. And we went over for his graduation. My mother and Brainerd were very close. He would take us down along the Rio Grande River, which was very close, and we'd go for drives. And he teased me. Brainerd was a great tease. He just loved me to pieces, and he would tease me because I was much younger, 9 years younger, and he teased me until I would cry, and then he'd stop.
Sounded like being an only child. It was probably pretty useful for you to have that kind of older brother.
Yeah, right. Oh, he was like an older brother. I just loved him.
Yeah. Now, that was the mother's side of your family. Last time we talked, you mentioned you had virtually no contact with your father's parents, with your grandparents on your father's side. Is that correct?
As far as I am aware, maybe when I was an infant I did, but I never saw them.
Right. Now, they came from California. They went, from back east to California and then made their way to Arizona. Is that correct?
The Stouts, which my grandmother was a Stout, lived in the Midwest. I believe it was Ohio. And they came out west because of my great grandmother's health. And they said it would be good for her to go out west, that she couldn't live very long if she stayed there because in Ohio, because she had apparently respiratory problems. So they traveled out I was always told, by Conestoga wagon to California, to Whittier Downey area.
Right. And then your grandfather, I think, was also from California, because your father was born in California, correct?
Yes, in Orange County.
Right. So they had made their way to California as well. Okay. So, but you had little contact with Nancy Mahedable Stout Johnson and James Riggin Johnson, who were your grandparents. But your father was their son. They had other kids, though. Did your father have brothers and sisters?
Oh goodness, yes. Let's see. I think there were 6 or 7 Johnsons. There were at least 4 boys and 2 girls.
And your father was number what? Do you know? What
he was, I think, next to the baby.
Okay. And one of those sisters was Anna Johnson, correct?
That's right, Anna Johnson Flood.
We'll get to her quite a bit in future interviews, but just want to establish that now, right? But we'll get to her in future interviews, but I just want to establish the relationship now. But in addition to Anna, were there other siblings of your father that you interacted with?
I knew my Aunt Della. I just loved her. She was a precious woman. And she was an older sister of my Aunt Anna. And I knew my Uncle Harry. He lived in Coolidge most of his later life. we visited him quite often when I was with my aunt and uncle.
Mhm.
Harry, and I knew Uncle Frank. He was the baby.
But
And
did these interactions take place after you went to live with the Floods, or I'm talking about before, while your mom was still alive? Did you interact at all with your dad's siblings?
apparently, when I was before my daddy died, there was interaction with my Aunt Anna and Uncle Maynard, because I have snapshots of her, of Aunt Anna being at our place on Park Avenue.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay. But then after your father died, did you have, do you recall having interactions with Johnsons until your mom passed away?
There were no interactions whatsoever.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about, living with your mom in your adobe house. You well, first of all, you used to talk about your mommy Tonner. I think one thing she would do would be to while away the time was to play solitaire. Was that right?
My grandmother loved to play solitaire,
Mhm.
but she cheated. I remember telling her, Mommy, Mommy Tonner, you cheated. Oh, well, it doesn't make any difference. I'm just playing by myself.
Well, she was right in a sense, but at that time you already knew how to play solitaire yourself, obviously, because you had to have known the rules to know she was cheating, right?
I guess so. I always loved to play solitaire as long as I can remember.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay. Now, musically speaking, did the Tonners, mommy and daddy Tonner, were they musical? Do you remember?
No, no music at all that I remember with them, but my Aunt Henrietta was very musical. She could sit down at the piano and play anything well by ear.
Okay. So she got the same talent that you did. Uh, it's interesting where that would have come from. Um, uh, Interesting, something to contemplate. So then again, I remember you mentioned before growing up, your mama, would cook all the time, and you did mention chorizo and scrambled eggs for breakfast. Also cornbread. Um, Describe how she made the cornbread or how she served the cornbread, and then anything else you can think of that she would cook.
Well, I remember her chicken and dumplings. They were delicious, and they were so light and airy. The dumplings, and she just made wonderful chicken and dumplings. And there was a frozen dessert. How she froze it so well, I don't know, because we just had an ice box. But it was kind of similar to the frozen fruit salad that I made all through your lifetime at Thanksgiving and Christmas. And it was very good. And unfortunately, I just don't remember much of anything else she cooked. Um, I remember eggs.
How did she make the cornbread? How did she serve that?
It was in a cast iron skillet.
Hmm.
Um, and but Brainerd tells me she was a wonderful cook and baked absolutely terrific cakes. But Brainerd loved his Aunt Irene so much that he would have thought anything she did was good.
Well, if she were baking cakes, that means she had an oven. You remember having an
Oh
oven
yeah,
and a
she had
stove,
an oven.
right?
She had an oven. In fact, in my mind's eye, I could see the stove uh, with the burners. I don't know whether we had gas or electricity. I presume it was gas. Everybody used gas in those days.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, the electric stove actually wasn't even invented and made commercial until 1935. So it would have definitely been gas. Um, but it definitely was not wood, correct? I mean, you don't remember lots of wood going into the stove?
Well, my next door neighbor, Dorothy Aldrich, her mother had a big old-fashioned wood stove in her kitchen,
Hmm.
and that's where she made her tortillas.
Yeah. But you don't remember your mom making any Mexican food?
I don't remember my mama what.
Making any Mexican food?
Only chorizo and scrambled eggs
Uh-huh. And she would buy the chorizo from where?
from the corner Mexican store, a really small little neighborhood Mexican store a couple of blocks from us.
Was that called, what was the name of it? Do you remember?
Guzman's store.
Okay. So I think just to set the kind of, so people who are young watching this and future generations will watch this, it's useful to kind of set the situation. You had electricity, is that correct?
Right.
But just so everybody knows, electricity, the first electric utility in Arizona started in the mid 1890s in Phoenix. So I'm sure it would have, spread to Tucson not long after that. But Tucson had not had electricity that long when you were born and grew up. And electricity obviously is critical for all of our modern conveniences for the most part. So did you have a telephone in the house?
No, I don't at least I do not remember a phone in the house. If we had one, I don't remember.
Uh-huh.
So I don't think we did.
Right.
My aunt and uncle did when I went to live with them.
Right, but we'll talk about that later. And that was probably more to do with your uncle's job than any idea that phones were generally available. But we'll get to that later. So if you wanted to communicate with somebody, if you wanted to say, let's meet somewhere or let's go someplace, do you remember how you would do it if you didn't have a telephone?
No, have no idea how.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Do you recall your mom or you using a phone outside of the house, like a public phone or a phone at a store or anything like that?
No.
Okay. So people generally were more or less limited or constrained to communicating with people who were generally in their physical vicinity. Is that fair to say?
It seems that way, yes.
Right. And of course, that physical vicinity would include schools and churches and other sort of civic organizations that people would belong to so that they would go to meetings. And so a lot of communication, do you think, probably took place at those meetings?
Well, communication was, when I look back on it, at least in my experience in Tucson, communication was pretty limited.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember our having a newspaper delivered.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember, I never entered a library during those years. It was quite limited.
Mm-hmm. But do you remember, you went to school, right?
Right.
You went to church.
Yeah.
Right. Did you belong to any other sort of civic organizations other than those, or did your mother belong to any?
Yes, I was quite amazed when I ran into a short article from the newspaper that had been saved by somebody, I don't know who, in my scrapbook. And it spoke about the founding members of the Delphian Society in Tucson. And it listed the members, and my mother, Irene Johnson, was one of the founding members.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an educational group.
Mm-hmm.
I remember looking through the books that she had. They were Delphian Society books, and they were gorgeous books with beautiful paintings. And apparently each year they chose a broad subject, and they would study it from these books and the pictures, and then meet and discuss it. And so I know my mother belonged to that.
Did she belong to any women's groups that were related to the church or not related to the church?
No,
Oh.
I don't remember any women's groups connected with the church. The Seventh-day Adventist Church, at least the church I remember going to, did not, and I don't think they have it today. They do not have what's called a pastorate like most denominations, Protestant denominations do. Their church services were led by elders.
Mhm.
And so they didn't have just one pastor that was a shepherd to the group, or
Right,
the elders were in charge.
right. So it was very anti-papist then. It really avoided any sort of single channel of the truth, right?
Uh,
Mediated by some human being.
mm,
Well,
mm.
what was your mother? What was the level of her education of your mother? Do you know?
I'm so sorry, I don't know. I wish I did.
Mhm,
I never saw any diplomas.
mhm,
I never saw anything that would tell me how far my mother went to school.
mhm. But being a founding member of the Delphian Society and really wanting you to go to college showed that she had a real passion for knowledge and education. It
Oh,
was.
she did. My mother was, when I look back now, I didn't appreciate it or know it before, but I realized my mother was a very bright woman. Um, she and her sister Henrietta had a passion for the English language. And my Henrietta was terrible. She would correct you in front of anybody if you used incorrect grammar. And she just was a bear about using correct grammar. And my mother spoke very well. She was very verbal. She seemed to be quite literate. I and somewhere along the way learned to play the piano well enough to play for church.
Mhm.
And my grandparents had a piano.
But you say they didn't play it. They weren't musical themselves, but it was for the kids.
I'm sorry.
You say your grandparents had a piano, but you also said they weren't very musical. So they had the
No,
piano. They had the piano for the girls.
my grandmother and grandfather never gave any indication of being musical.
So they had the piano in their home for the girls, for your mom and your
Yes,
sister.
right.
Okay, and your mom, she wasn't that young when she married your father, was she?
She was, I think she was 28.
Yeah, that's pretty old for back then, I think.
It is.
So she had clearly some sort of history of going to school and or working or something up to that
I
point.
have no idea what she did in those years, none whatsoever.
Interesting. Yeah.
And she didn't have me until she was 32.
Right. So that's very kind of unusual for that
Yeah,
era.
it was.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. Okay, so you didn't have any newspapers, and so you're really the only way that you communicated with people was through, physical contact. Really, going to various schools, churches, Delphian Society, whatever, music lessons. In terms of entertainment, right? You had no television.
We had no television, and I do not remember a radio, but I think we had one.
Well, I don't think radio came into. Let's see. I've got some notes here.
Well, Dad remembers One Man's Family and all these programs on radio, Amos and Andy. He remembers cuddling around the radio with his family, listening to those programs. And I don't remember such a thing.
Well, I think radio really came into existence in a large way in around 1920. So it would have been just before you were born, but then not every house would have had a radio at that point. It sounds like Dad's home did, and maybe yours didn't.
But Dad always talked about crystal sets, and I don't know anything about them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, those are just a sort of a primitive sort of radio, Now, but they're silent movies. You said you did go to the movies a lot with your mom. And of course, silent movies, the movies were silent from the 1890s really to the late 1920s. And the first talkie was 1927, commercial talkie. So do you recall going to silent movies with your mom, or by the time you were going, were they all talkies?
My best memories are talkies. I think I've seen more silent films since I've been an adult than I ever did growing up. Because once in a while I watch them on TV. I don't really remember silent movies, but I do remember the talkies because we went to all the musicals.
Uh-huh. And you recall that's all you went to see were musicals, or did you go to see other types of movies with your mom?
You know, they were really mostly musicals, yeah.
Okay, and who made the musicals? Who were your big stars? Who did you like to watch?
Well, the Gold Diggers movies, there was a Gold Diggers of 1933, 1934, 1936. They were all of those musicals with Joan Blondell and Ginger Rogers and Dick Powell, Ruby Keeler,
And this is
Al Jolson.
okay. And why gold diggers? Because I mean today today the word gold digger is not a good word. Well, do you know why they were called gold digger movies?
What about them?
Today, gold digger is not a good term. Do you know why
Oh,
they
it
were
isn't.
called?
It isn't. You're right.
Do you know why they were called gold digger movies?
Have no idea why they named them that, but they were dancers and singers, and they. I don't know why. And then also along about that time were Jeanette MacDonald and Nelson Eddy movies, one right after the other.
Uh-huh.
And then we had Broadway melody movies. There was a series of those with Fred Astaire and Eleanor Powell and just the dancers and singers and very slim dialogue.
Yeah. Now the gold digger movies you said had Ginger Rogers. Was that before she and Fred Astaire got together?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so she was a star on her own.
Yes, right.
Right. Okay. Now there were these movies where they had, people dancing, and you see from above, and they're dancing in patterns and stuff like that. The famous movies where they have all the dancers on stage.
Busby Berkeley was a big guy during those musicals. He's the one that shot from above and all of those synchronized dance scenes and they were extremely elaborate.
Yeah. Now, would you say you went every week with your mom? How often did you go with your mom?
How was what?
How often did you go to the movies with your mother?
Oh, gee, I don't know how often. Maybe every time a musical came to town, we went.
Okay. Did you ever go see any live music?
Did I ever
go to any live performances that you recall?
Oh, no, never.
Yeah.
Never.
When was the first time you went to a movie without your mother? Do you remember?
Let me think. Probably when I started dating in high school. Probably when I was 15, I guess it would be.
And
Dad and I would go to the movies on the weekends.
And would that have been the first time you went to maybe a non-musical?
Probably, yeah. But even then, we went to a lot of musicals.
Do you remember the first non-musical you ever saw?
Boy, I hear you much better now. What would it have been? Maybe it was a Clark Gable, Claudette Colbert movie. It happened one night, or I don't remember what it would be.
Who were the heartthrobs back then? Who did the women love and who did the men love?
Well, let's see. Clark Gable was a biggie. In fact, I remember seeing a musical that he danced in, if you can believe it, with Norma Shearer. There was Clark Gable, Spencer Tracy, John Bowles, Ronald Coleman, Greta Garbo, Norma Shearer.
And did you have any strong musical tastes by this time? Were there any particular musical artists that you liked to listen to in particular?
No.
Okay. When did Frank Sinatra come on the scene?
Oh my goodness, I thought he was wonderful. probably 1939 or 40. I remember the night that Tommy Dorsey came when Frank Sinatra was just coming on the scene, and Tom, he sang with the Tommy Dorsey band, and they played a one night stand at the Santa Rita Hotel lobby, and I went to that.
Did you go with Dad?
No, I wasn't. That's funny. No, I didn't. So it had to be before 1939, or it might have been early 1939, because I didn't go with Dad.
'Cause you were only 15.
I don't remember who I went, but I went and heard Frank Sinatra sing with Tommy Dorsey.
Was that a big deal?
Oh, it was a huge deal.
Mhm. So did you have a record player at home? Do you remember?
We must have, but I don't remember it at all. I can't. In my mind's eye, I don't remember it. No.
Mhm.
We
So
we had a baby grand piano at my aunt's house.
I'm talking about now, before your mom died, when you're living with your mom.
Oh, okay. No, I don't remember a record player.
Okay, so you don't remember radio, don't remember a record player, obviously no computer, no internet. So you spent a lot of time playing the piano.
Oh, that and playing outside. I played outside a lot.
Mhm.
Dorothy, my next door neighbor, and I were played together every day. We meet at the dividing fence between our property with our little beat up tin cans and stuff, and we'd make mud pies. I remember that very clearly. And we had a little club, just the two of us, and we had a ledger, and we keep track of all fake stuff that we made up.
Mhm.
And then we'd have a fallout. And I'd go home, and Dorothy would go at her house, and then after a little while, we'd be back again. It's typical kids.
Mhm. But did you have any toys that you can remember, or were you just making your own toys?
Mostly I remember paper dolls.
Mhm.
Oh, I love paper dolls. And I designed dresses and cut them out of paper and put them on my paper dolls. I remember one little doll I had. I wish I had kept it. I don't know what happened to it. It was one of those old-fashioned china dolls. It had a beautiful china head, a baby's head, and it had a soft body and little soft arms and legs, and but a beautiful little china head. And I seem to have that for a long time.
Mhm.
And we didn't celebrate Christmas or anything where you get gifts in my home. That
But
was
yeah, but in general, was there much gift giving? Did you remember receiving gifts
no,
from your grandparents
no,
or your aunts and uncles or anything like that?
no gift giving whatsoever. I remember the old J.C. Penney store was on the corner of I think it was 6th Avenue and Congress Street. And it had a little mezzanine or little raised platform. And I remember going there, this is such a vivid memory, with my mother one day and standing looking at what they had on this raised platform. And it was a huge array of all sizes of baby dolls. And some were big, some were not so big, some were very small. And I can remember standing there with my mother, just gazing at them, just loving them. And I wanted one so badly. Oh, I wanted one so badly. And I don't remember my mother buying one.
Mhm.
Probably didn't have the money to, or I don't know. But anyway, I just have that vivid memory of standing there looking at all those, what I thought were beautiful dolls.
Right. Do you happen to remember what they cost?
No, I don't remember that at all.
Do you think the austerity was a matter of poverty, or do you think it also derives somewhat from her religious beliefs? Were the Adventists fairly austere in their own
Well,
lives?
the lack of celebrating Christmas was definitely due to the religious affiliation. Adventists did not celebrate Christmas. I don't remember them. I don't remember them celebrating Easter, but they believed in the New Testament. They taught from the New Testament.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Adventists later. I think in our next session, I want to go more deeply into that. But I mean, the Puritans, for example, actually celebrated austerity. They thought it was a sign of doing God's work. Do you recall if the Adventists had the same sort of attitude?
I don't know.
Okay.
I never looked at it that way.
But you don't remember.
I think a good deal of it was that there wasn't the money to buy these things.
Yeah, so it was more of a function of just economic circumstances. Yeah. But you don't remember having many physical toys to play with. You kind of had to, you had to use your imagination. You had to make your own toys. Well,
I'm trying to think. No, just that one little doll, and that's it. We climbed the mulberry tree in the backyard. We just played outside. Jacks. We played a lot of hopscotch.
Did you? I forgot what I was going to say. The music lessons you took, did you have a music book that you had to buy for the lessons?
When I started lessons, yes.
Yeah. And then
with the simplest little exercises, I remember.
Right. And then in addition to that, did you buy sheet music?
Oh my gosh, honey. When my mother died, I had huge stacks. I mean, huge stacks of music, sheet music. I honestly don't remember the physical act of going to the music store and buying it. But if we went to a musical with Dick Powell and whoever he was with, Ruby Keeler and all, and Mom and I would go to the music store and we'd buy the sheet music from that movie. And when we moved in July into this place where I am, I owned a huge stack of music that was in the back porch. And then there were 2 boxes filled with music, sheet music in the storage room. And the sheet music dated from the early 20s on up to, there was even some almost current sheet music in it.
So that was probably, other kids were getting toys, you were getting sheet music. I mean,
yeah, well,
you could look at it that way.
Probably because, of course, we had to pay for it.
Yeah.
It cost, I think, something between 15 cents and 35 cents for sheet music.
Right. And then you'd take it home and try to master it, right? Like they did in the movies.
Yeah. But it's funny, I had all that sheet music. I always thought it was so simple, the arrangements. So early on, well, I say early on, during the big band era, I started from being exposed to that rhythm and that kind of arrangements. I started making my own arrangements
of the old sheet music.
I just neglected the old sheet music. Really, in effect, I stopped buying it about the 40s and big band era.
And so by then you didn't need sheet music because you were played enough by ear by then that you didn't need the sheet music. Yeah.
And I like the chords and the arrangements of the big band groups, and I preferred playing that.
So when you were a kid taking piano lessons, did your teacher come once a week, or did you go to her place?
Mrs. Lomax was my last teacher, and she was my teacher from the time I went to live with Aunt Anna and Uncle Maynard.
Okay, let's not talk about, okay, but she taught you when you were with your mother also?
Yes.
Okay. Would she
and
come to your
Mama-
house or did you go to her house?
No, we'd go to her house. Everybody
Okay.
went to her house.
Okay.
Mama would take me over to her house, which was not too far from Tucson High School. And she would sit and listen. In fact, Mrs. Lomax couldn't get over how even when my mother became ill, she would come and she would lie down on Mrs. Lomax's sofa and listen
Wow.
to my lesson
Wow. And so that was once a week?
once a week.
And so you would take the lesson, but that you would not only prepare the lesson, but also during the week you'd be playing with your sheet music and doing all sorts of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So clearly you were spending a lot of time on the piano in addition to playing with Dorothy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Now, do you remember where the music store was, where you went to buy the sheet
Down on
music?
Congress Street, it was McWhorter's music store.
Uh-huh. Okay. So that's sort of the entertainment aspect of your life. All right.
Oh, yeah. A big part of it.
Now let's talk about, your mom and convenience and that sort of thing. Did you have a refrigerator?
We had an icebox.
Oh, tell us what an icebox is. I'm not even sure I know what an icebox is.
Well, an icebox is an upright piece of furniture that had a drip pan underneath the bottom of it. You slid this big drip pan back and forth to empty it and put it back. It had a place to put a block of ice. I'm not sure what size we would usually get, either the 10-pound or the 25-pound block of ice. And there was a place in the refrigerator for that block of ice. And it had what we thought was a frozen part up at the top inside, and shelves to put food on. And oftentimes, and I know everybody had this problem, you'd forget to empty the drip pan until you saw the water coming out of the bottom of the refrigerator. And then you'd empty the drip pan and put it underneath again. And then you had a card that the ice company gave you when you got ice. And the card had 4 different corners. And it told the iceman that you wanted ice that day, and it told him what size block you needed, and he would come in and deliver your ice to you.
And he came through the.
Did he put that card in the window?
Right. Did he come through the neighborhood every day?
I don't remember that.
Okay. And well, this gets me to an interesting question. Did you have chores to do? Did your mother ask you to do things around the house? Do you remember?
No, she didn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So your only job was to play and be a little girl and have fun and play the piano and play with your friends. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. So she did the dishes. She did all the cooking. She did all the cleaning.
Right.
Okay. And did there a washing machine or anything, or did she do all your clothes by hand? Do you remember?
I don't remember a thing about how we took care of our laundry.
Mm-hmm.
Not a thing.
Do you remember a clothesline, laundry hanging anywhere on the property or anything like that?
No.
And you were never asked to do anything like that? Okay. And of course, she obviously never had a vacuum cleaner, I'm sure.
I don't remember a vacuum cleaner. I remember a broom.
Yeah. Okay. Well, did she do all the sweeping and that sort of thing? Never asked you to do it?
No.
Okay, that's interesting. She had probably a gas stove or range. Did all the washing by hand, I assume. I doubt if she sent it out, so she probably would have had to do it all by hand. Yeah. And you had an ice box instead of a refrigerator. Do you remember getting sick as a kid when you lived with your mom?
Yes. I was very prone to have bad chest colds.
Okay.
And tonsillitis.
Okay.
But she never had my tonsils removed.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I would get very bad chest colds, and I have vivid memory of my mother. I would be lying in bed and she would have a pan or a dish, some kind of container, and she would heat and make mustard plasters.
Mhm.
That would be a wool piece of cloth dipped in well, I know what, sometimes she'd do it with a Vicks vapor rub type. And she would wring out the cloth in as hot water as she could stand it with this vapor rub or whatever the mustard plaster was. And then she'd put it on my bare chest and have me breathe in the fumes.
Mhm.
I remember that so clearly. And I remember the sore throats, from the tonsillitis. Yeah, I remember those.
Did she ever take you to the doctor? Did you remember?
Not that I don't remember going in a doctor's office, but we did have a doctor, Dr. Gotthelf. He would seem to be the doctor for all the kids in Tucson.
And what did you? How did you ever see him? Did he come to the house, or did you go to his? How do you know about this guy?
No, I don't remember a doctor ever coming to the house.
You don't remember. You don't remember going to see a doctor?
Vaguely, just vaguely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you would have to do that, for example, when you went to the movies, or you go to the music store to buy sheet music, or you go to the doctor's, how would you go? Because I know you didn't have a car until when?
I don't remember the year that we got a car, but we did have a car toward the end of my mother's life. That little blue Essex that I told you about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where it came from or how we got it, or I just don't. Apparently kids we're not told anything.
Yeah.
Like today, families talk about everything they do.
Yeah.
But
do you remember before you got the car, if you had to go somewhere, or did you either have to get a ride, or would you just walk everywhere?
we just walk.
Okay. So you walked to the movies?
Yes, I can remember walking to the movies.
How many blocks would that have been?
Oh, it would have been a long way. We lived on 19th Street and the movies were on Congress. So Broadway is what, 900?
Yeah.
That'd
be 10, 12 blocks. Just north and south, that's 10, 12 blocks. I don't know, east or west.
Yeah, it would be at least that far. Mm-hmm.
And then the music store, if you left the movies and you'd walk to the movie store, would that be pretty close? I mean, the music store, would that be pretty close?
That would be close. Yes, it would be on Congress Street.
And you'd walk back.
Yeah.
And do you remember those walks? Do you remember those walks? Would you kind of play? Would you talk to your mom? Would you talk about the movie? Would you sing?
I can remember holding her hand all that time.
And would you kind of recreate kind of the movies? Would you sing the
Oh,
songs?
when I got home, yes. Oh my goodness, yes. We would do a performance on Dorothy's porch. Oh yes.
Yeah. Now, what was and just two more quick questions, and then we'll end this session. Do you remember getting any treats, like sweets or just treats? Would you go get ice cream or anything like that? Or was there an ice cream guy or a treat guy who'd come through the neighborhood that you could buy something from?
Well, I have a very vivid memory of sitting on our front porch in the pink house on Park Avenue. And in the early evening, in a chair, and a real treat was to have a little cup or dish of vanilla and chocolate ice cream. And I remember I loved to take my spoon and mix them together. That was a treat. That was a real treat.
Mm-hmm. Now, where did that come from?
I don't know.
I think your mom probably just bought it at the store and put it in the
Probably
icebox.
did. I don't know.
How often would you have it? Do you remember?
Oh, it seems like we had it quite often, but I don't know how often.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Other than that, did you get treats at the store? Do you remember eating candy or anything, or other kinds of ice cream treats, or
No.
drinking sarsaparilla or eating Horshound candy or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
I know I didn't drink milk when I was a child growing up. I hated it. I also, getting away from the food situation, I also remember somehow maybe it was from the movie magazines that I would save money to buy. I love movie magazines. The glossy print, big 8x10 pictures in the current heartthrobs. But I remember cutting out advertisements for Tangy Cosmetics. That would be especially the lipstick. And I remember they would offer free samples if you mailed in that coupon. And I remember mailing in coupons quite often to this Tangy company. And I would just breathlessly wait for the mailman to bring me my free sample, which they did. And I get these free samples for Tangy products. And would you believe the Vermont Country Store, which was the catalog Dad and I followed to get to first when it came, we loved it. They are a magazine that advertised carrying all these old products like the Evening in Paris perfume and Joy perfume and Tangy products, and they sell them even today. But I remember that was an exciting time.
So the Adventists weren't opposed to cosmetics.
Apparently not.
Did your mother use cosmetics? Do you remember?
No, I don't remember her using cosmetics. She did not sit and primp and makeup. No.
Yeah. Now I know there were, lots of nice department stores and things like that around Tucson. There are Hawke and Steinfelds. Now, did you ever go to those stores? Do you remember?
No.
Yeah. And then the last question, you talk about, during the summertime going to El Paso. In Tucson, did you ever take any excursions? Did you ever go to this is not living with your mother. Did you ever go to Mount Lemmon? Did you ever take any excursions? Go anywhere? Did you visit people in California also? Do you remember?
Yes, I remember one excursion that we would go on, and I think we went there more than once, was Sabino Canyon.
Okay.
I have snapshots of my mother and myself in Sabino Canyon.
And do you remember how you got there? You must have gone with somebody because you didn't walk to Sabino Canyon.
No.
I know that.
No, I sure don't remember how we got there. And it was always with somebody else. And especially I remember being there with Mrs. Miller. Now, Mrs. Miller, this is interesting, had 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. And the boy they called Bud. Frank, that's the guy who jumped out of the rescue.
That's Bud Miller? That Bud Miller?
Yeah, Bud Miller.
I didn't realize he was so much a part of your life early on. I thought he was later before we met him.
No, when I was a little girl, my mother knew Mrs. Miller and her family very well. And we even had excursions in Sabino Canyon together.
So clearly they probably had a car, I would think, and you would probably go, yeah. Okay, well, just now tell the listeners who Bud Miller was and became. You started to mention that he jumped out of something, but go ahead and tell it.
Well, Bud was a military fellow. He was a GI, an enlisted man. But actually, Bud was a hero if you stopped and looked at what he did. He became what did they call him? He went out on rescue missions in a helicopter, and he would just jump out of the helicopter and go down and rescue whoever was in the plane crash or whoever was in the ocean.
Search and rescue.
He was given a medal several times for his heroism, and he ended up twice in Dad's life and in our lives. Once was in at his rescue school he went to up in the Rocky Mountains above Denver. Lo and behold, there's Bud. He comes to Dad's camp, his crew, and says, "Is there a Captain Hawke here?" And Dad said yes. And he said, "Well, I'm Bud Miller." And he was in charge of the ones teaching people how to get out of a rescue situation.
Yeah, evade capture. Yeah.
And then the other time he came into our lives was when Dad arrived in Sidi Slimane, Morocco. And lo and behold, who's stationed there but Bud and his wife and kids. And that's where you come in. You three boys, when we lived on the base in Morocco, there was an area outside the housing area, but still accessible to you kids. And they do practice jumps. And Bud always filled his pocket with bubble gum and candy. And when he practiced jump, you three boys would see it from a distance and run. And he would give you candy. And our first Christmas in Morocco was as guests at Bud and at home. They had us for Christmas dinner.
Well, with that great story, I'm going to end it for now. This has been a long session, but very interesting, I think. So thanks. Get a lot of rest today. We're going to do this session 3 in another couple of days, and I love you.
I love you much more. And besides that, I have several things I need to talk to you about. So later when you have the time, give me a ring.
Will do. Take care.
Okay.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.